This episode is brought to you by Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard of Anchor, you should definitely check them out. It's a super easy tool that anyone can use to create and distribute their podcast. It has everything you need, and you can do it all from your computer or even your phone. Need your podcast cover art? There's a tool. Music and sound effects? They have you covered. Want to record on the fly? It's easy with the app. Now you may be saying to yourself, I already have a podcast. No worries, just create your account, upload, and publish to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Looking for some walking around money? Anchor connects you with advertisers who match your brand. It's a one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started.
Hi, welcome to BizQuik. I'm Julie.
I'm Corey.
And today we have part 2 of You're Not Alone, a limited series on mental and financial wellness. We've all had a really stressful year, and we've heard from so many people, not just small business owners, that they're at their breaking point.
This podcast series isn't just for small business owners. We truly believe that everyone can benefit from these conversations. In a year when so many people have had challenge after challenge, we wanted to find a way to offer some help and hope.
We decided to reach out to various networks to bring together a few episodes that will hopefully help give you some advice and guidance on how to keep going. We believe in the never say quit entrepreneurial spirit, and these experts will provide insight from their knowledge, our own experiences on ways to keep moving forward.
This podcast will be released every Saturday in the month of December, and we'll have a licensed therapist as well as business and financial experts telling their stories and giving advice on how to keep yourself sane.
On today's episode, we have Chris Cannon. He's an entrepreneur out of Johnson City. Along with helping his wife manage her dental practice, Cannon Family Dental, he operates SmileMaker University and Elite Practice Development, which are companies aimed at helping improve the business side of dental practices. Chris is going to talk to us today about disaster recovery and the importance of knowing your business.
Welcome, Chris. Tell us your story.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah. We've all been going through this together. Since COVID broke out, and on March the 12th, we got the call. Actually, I got a call from one of my bankers that said, they're talking about shutting you all down. And I walked back in my office and I told my office manager, I said, they're going to shut us down. And she said, there's no way. And so I immediately went into my office, pulled out a legal pad, and started writing down what I do whenever something bad happens. And I've learned this, unfortunately, from losing everything that we owned in business about 5 years ago. We had a massive flood. The temperature got down to -13 one night. The office beside us had sold the day before. The pipe froze, and the main feeder line going into the building broke while we had patients in the chair. And this is in we have a cosmetic and general dentistry practice in Johnson City. So patients are in the chair, the water main breaks, and it all comes through the ceiling. So 135,000 gallons of water in a matter of 30 minutes or so. And we lost everything. All the equipment, all the x-ray machines, everything. The only thing we could save was the desk and the safe and the server. So whenever that happened, we were down for roughly about 90 days. And we had zero production. And it was probably one of the scariest times that me and my wife had ever went through. She was about 6 months pregnant at the time. And when I walked in the front door of the office and it was flooded, she was standing up to her ankles in water at that point, holding her belly, and just without any hope. We both looked at each other, we're like, we're screwed. Like, we are going to lose everything. And after we got all the water out of the office that night, me and my father-in-law sat in what we call, it was basically a closet. That was our office at that time. And we wrote down, I just sat there and started writing down, what do we owe people? And then how are we going to get through this? And we just kind of talked it through. But probably one of the scariest times, and it really helped us go get ready for COVID, if you can call it getting ready. I mean, I don't think anybody was prepared for this, but it's been a crazy ride these last 8 months. So
it's interesting that you talk about the taking that legal pad and writing things down to kind of help get in your mind exactly where it is that you stand and how bad the situation is. Like when something unexpected happens to me, like if, before, when I used to be an independent consultant and would be working, for a business directly, I was like a 1099 employee, if you will, a 1099 contractor. If that contract would suddenly end, my method, and I pretty much use this for everything in my life, is that I sit down and go through what I like to call the worst case scenario. And I'm like, what's the worst thing that can happen as a result of this? And it's, I always start with the very worst. Am I going to die?
Right.
And it's like, nope. And then I kind of walk back from it and figure out, will I go bankrupt? Well, maybe if you can't ever find a job again. Right. And so once I know the very worst thing that could happen, I feel better, because then I can build a plan around it. So it sounds like that's kind of where you started from, was let's write down everything that we know, and then you just worked from there.
Yeah. And you have to remember, nothing is permanent, except for death. I mean, like everything will end eventually, and we knew they were only telling us here 2 weeks, like, 2 weeks, you're gonna be shut down for 2 weeks, and then, everything will be fine. You'll be back open. And then they started, I knew it was going to be way longer than that, because it takes, you get the government involved in anything, it's going to be a month before you can get anything even started.
Yeah. And you're talking about COVID now, not the flood. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I do is what I learned through the shutdown with the flood was, I put down how much cash I had, how I could get cash. So I went on all my credit cards and figured out how much cash advance do I have, how much, available credit do I have. I had an open line of credit, which I recommend for everybody. That's something you start now for something you need later, and get as much as you can, even if you don't need it. And that's one of the things that really helped us survive through that, was we had a line of credit open, and I figured out my cash burn rate, how fast I need, what can I cut out, how fast am I going to burn through my cash, and how long can I survive? And then you start working from the bottom up from there. And it's kind of what we did here. And this one's even a little bit different whenever COVID happened, because we were doubling, the office that we're in now, we doubled our office size. We moved in April 15th, was when we took over the lease. So they completed construction during COVID, and we had twice the lease payment and twice the expenses of everything. So we had that happening at the same time during this disaster. So it's all complicated, but what you got to do is you just got to simplify it down as much as you can, and just take it bit by bit, and just go through it.
Yeah, and this has definitely been the longest 2 weeks all of us have ever experienced.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, it has.
But trust us, it's only going to be 2 weeks. You remember that? Yeah.
And then everything's going to go back to normal.
Yeah.
Normal. Yeah.
Going back to the flood, how prepared were you to deal with something like that, in terms of, did you have insurance and anything else like that, like any kind of like disaster plans?
We did not have a disaster plan. We do now. And that's kind of one thing that it taught us, was I plan for everything now. Like I have literally, I get so anxious if I cannot try to see around every corner that I can. And I a lot of times I try to figure out, like, what, if this happens, what does, I played a lot of sports. So if we run this play, if they run this play, we're going to run this play type thing. It's how we look at it. So whenever that happened, we did have insurance on the equipment. The insurance adjuster, it was over $1 million loss whenever it happened. And we ended up having to take a loan out for the difference between the equipment and the repairs. That we just weren't insured enough. We were insured pretty well, but not nearly what we should be. And we had a office overhead policy that was junk. We found that out. We paid on it for 4 or 5 years, and it was junk. It was, our insurance agent didn't know what he was talking about when he sold it to us. But we learned that lesson. But luckily, we learned it on year 5 and not year 15 after we paid for it for another 10 years. But
Yeah.
um,
I don't mean to laugh at it, but that is a common problem that people run into.
and that's one thing. Just because your friend's an insurance agent doesn't mean that you need to buy insurance from your friend. And it cost a friendship there for us. It was a really tough situation because we were all put in a bad situation at that point. And
I've got a friend who sells business insurance, and he specifically told me he would never sell me insurance for that reason.
There's a good reason that's one person you probably don't need to do business with at that point.
I want to talk a little bit about the, sort of finding a way to work your way through things, like from that emotional or mental standpoint, right? So your business gets flooded and you have this approach that you use, and maybe you had been using it for years, or you just kind of stumbled upon this thing that you're like, okay, you're being methodical. Let us write down all these things, figure this, the math out, your cash burn rate, whatnot. And by the course of doing it, it helped you to feel better because you knew what the picture was. And I think so many people, especially small business owners, but just people in general, find it easier to bury their head in the sand than to have to deal with the realities of what's happening. It's, I like to say that it's that when you're in college or you're younger and you go to the ATM and you take money out and you don't have a lot of money in there, but you've got some money, and you get that receipt and you just crumple it up and throw it away without looking at what that number is. That's how a lot of people are responding and dealing with what's happening right now, because I think, many people feel so overwhelmed. So what are some tips or some things that you would like people to know for finding a way to make themselves feel better or to get more educated about the situation?
There's several things I think about is like, remember, everything is temporary. So what you're going through right now is just temporary. It is going to end eventually. And start now for later. So easy is saying, well, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll meet with that guy here in a couple of weeks. Like that line of credit that we had going into this, we had it put in place in November through a new relationship that I made in May of last year. That was huge for us because we literally, the day that I figured out like, hey, they're going to shut us down, I pulled that line of credit. Like I pulled as much of a draw off as I felt good about, and put it in the bank account. And that was my sacred account. I didn't touch it. And that's my comfort level there. Like that was my cushion. And like, I think like people, my wife hates to plan stuff like that. She hates to deal with all that kind of stuff. Like she handles none of the numbers in the business. She's the dentist, so she just produces. And what she was saying was like, if we hadn't have done that, we would have been out of business, and we would have been out of business for the flood. And, luckily we had a lot of things in place for COVID, but we didn't expect it to last 8 months. And it's, I would just start planning now for what's going to happen in the future, because like Corey said, as long as 2 weeks we've ever had, there's going to be something else happen, in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10. I mean, everybody's going to have something happen to them. That's the only guarantee you got.
All right, we got our friend Chad Felderhoff back on the program to tell you about his company, Muenster Milling.
Hey guys, Chad Felderhoff here with Muenster Milling Company. We're a 4th generation owned family business. We've been making dog food for 4 generations in Muenster, Texas. We've got our 12 days of Christmas coming up. We're going to have a new special every day starting December 11th, running all the way through December 22nd. Even your pet needs to enjoy the 12 days of Christmas. We'll have multiple specials, anywhere from 30% off to a free 1-pound bag of beef liver. So you can learn more by going to muenstermilling.com, sign up for the email, sign up for the text alerts, get it shipped directly to your house, sign up for auto ship, and save even more.
Thanks, Chad. Now back to the show. Going back to your disaster plan, can you kind of give us an idea of, what's included in there, like kind of how you created it. Just I don't know, chat about that if you wouldn't mind.
So in my disaster plan, what happened, what I did is I went ahead and called all of my suppliers, and I told them, I said, hey, of course, this is what's going on. We're not gonna be able to pay you right now. Let me figure out what I can do, and then I'll call you back. We met with our employees, all of our staff, and we were like, everything's gonna be fine. And that's one thing you have to do is, as a leader of your business, you have to kind of put on a face, and even though you're scared, you can't act like you're scared. And everybody's gonna be fine. Everybody's gonna get paid, and everything's gonna be okay. Because their number one thing is, I literally had people being like, so how are we gonna pay our rent? Like, if we're not in business, if we're not being able to produce, how are you going to pay us? Well, we had that money set aside so we can pay people for a while. And then I just start going through, like, this is what it's going to take to get back to normal. And then go out 3 months, go back out 2 months, go back up 30 days and start making an action plan of what I got to do in the next 30 days to get to day 31, what I got to do in the second month, what I got to do in the third month, just to get, back to what we need to do to get back to business. And I think the biggest thing is just open communication with everybody involved. Like, we're going through an issue right now. We're going through a hard time. I hope y'all can deal with us. Our banks were not as easy to deal with as we would like. I remember that. And I keep score on that one right there. And I remember the people that were good to us. And our landlord was actually really good. Of course, it was kind of, we had to find him on a boat in the Bahamas. He was out of cell service, so it took us like 4 days to find out where he was at. And once he figured out what was going on, he was very helpful. But I think the biggest thing is just trying to figure out, having all those things in place, like that line of credit. You got cash, you got time. You don't have to make any rash decisions at that point, because nothing changes in the next, 24 hours. And then just start chiseling away at it.
So for the people that are already deep in the suck, let's just call it that, right? Where they didn't have the line of credit and they're starting to exhaust what they have.
Right.
What, any guidance for them? And maybe this is a little bit more like what you went through with the flood, right? Where you're shut down for X period of time and you don't have revenue coming in. Like, what would you say to those people who don't have access to a line of credit?
You have money available to you. And I think the hardest thing for me is, don't feel bad about asking people for help. I personally do not like to borrow money from anybody, family wise or anything, but we had family that, they were there for us and they helped us out. Like your credit cards, you may have a credit card sitting in a drawer somewhere that may have $5,000 on it. That $5,000 may get you through another month. It will end. It will end. You just have to be there when it ends, and just not give up. And that grit and determination is one of the hardest things to see while you're going through it. I guess was the hardest thing for us, is to know that everything was going to be okay. But everything was fine. I mean, it wasn't fine. It gets better. So, but I would think, like, if you have to sell your car, you have to sell your car. Whatever you got to do to make your business survive. And that's the thing, is don't be afraid to make some decisions and do some things.
You have to kind of figure out what the most meaningful thing is to you, and then put all of your energy towards making that thing happen.
One of the things that we found as people, we were talking with friends, family, clients, et cetera, through this whole thing, is that there's definitely been some positives that have come out of it. For instance, pretty early on, people realized that they could let go certain employees that they wouldn't have beforehand, but now they don't feel bad about it. So that was one of the things that a bunch of people were like, well, I finally got rid of that one person and I had an excuse now. So, that's, kind of a dark way to look at it, but still it's a silver lining for a business owner. So have there been any kind of lessons or anything like that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think one positive that happens is you find out who your rock stars are. You find out who your people you can rely on are, and then you figure out who was just in it for the paycheck. And when we had the flood, we had one. She's actually still with us. I guess she's probably been with us for 8 or 9 years now. And she come to us and she's like, "You don't have to pay me. Like, we'll figure it out later. What do y'all need me to do?" type thing. And you remember those people, and you remember the people that show up on their own time and don't expect to get paid. They're shoveling ceiling tiles that have fallen down, out into the dumpster. And that, like you said, there's certain people that needed to be let go probably a long time ago. They just finally found their way out. And something else that we figured out was through the last one was cross-training your people in everything you do. So, like, we can pretty much, there's not a thing in this office that I can't do on the business side. And there's not anything that there's 4 people can do my job here to a certain degree, and that's the thing is, like, that doesn't start now. That started like 4 or 5 years ago. And that's something that we learned whenever we had the flood was, you're not going to have your whole staff all the time. You may have to let 2 or 3 people go. We didn't have to let anybody go during that time, but if you do, you still have to do business, and cross-training your people is the best thing we've ever done, where everybody can kind of do everything.
Great advice for all small business owners, and great advice even for people that are, employees of someplace else that might be listening to this podcast, that with the more skills you have and the more you can be dependent on, or that you can count on your employees to do other things, the stronger you are as a business owner. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about a pivot that you made during COVID as a result of COVID because of your dental business. You started a consulting company to help other dentists. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when the world was burning down in March, and everybody's trying to figure out what to do, people were texting, calling, and saying, like, "Hey, what do y'all like? We don't know what to do." Like, a lot of Beth is my wife. A lot of her friends, they bought practices or started a practice, and the dental world is pretty stable. Like, there's not really anything. It's a pretty stable business. There's not a lot of ups and downs. And then when you just get hit and it's no income at all, everybody kind of freaked out. So we were getting a lot of calls and texts and stuff. And about 1.5 years ago, we'd started a company called Smile Maker University, and it's an online training platform for dental practices. So virtually we can train, dental practices in marketing, phone systems, all that kind of stuff. And whenever we did that, we said, there's a lot of people needing a lot of things. So we started a consulting company called Elite Practice Development. And a lot of people want to know, like, how do you get the most out of your people? How do you get the most out of your practice? And going back to the sports thing is, I always think there's more in the tank, and we can always do more, and we can be better tomorrow than we were yesterday, So through this, we had time. We were forced to be at home for 8 weeks. Well, we weren't home, we were here, but we had some time. So me and Beth sat down and we come up with the consulting company. And kind of, that's the other thing is, out of every bad thing, there is an opportunity there. There's something good to come out of it, and it's what you make out of it. And I'm a little bit more optimistic than I used to be about stuff. Beth kind of gets mad at me sometimes because I try to look for opportunities in everything. But I don't know, it's done well. We've helped a lot of people, and that's kind of our whole thing is, just trying to make people not quit, she has had some friends sell her practice just because they can't deal with the stress of it right now. And there's a lot going through it. I don't know. I just don't like to see people give up, because it's, if you can survive through it long enough, it will end. Your bad times will end. So.
Well, that's something else that we saw is that, even outside of dental practices, like I said, my brother's in the dental industry, so I know it well here in Richmond. But the people who were looking for a way out, use this as an opportunity to be like, you know what, I wasn't really excited about this anyways, or, whatever, I'm just gonna go ahead and sell my business or just close my doors. So, that is an option that I think everybody does need to consider as well, is that, at some point, you want to persist and you want to keep going, but at some point you might need to, figure out what that exit strategy looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you, as through part of your consulting, do you advise people to come up with exit strategies, so at least they know, almost from the, the concept of build to sell, where they know what it is that would cause them to go that direction?
Yeah. And that's one thing that we see a lot, is there is no plan in place for anything. Beth has a 55 and out plan. And it's something that we kind of encourage, is she's retiring at 55. Now what we have to do is reverse engineer that retirement. So we take her 55 number and go backwards, and, she's 39 right now. So we've only got 16 years left. And a lot of people don't think about retiring or getting out until the last minute. And I always kind of look at all of our businesses as, if I needed to sell it today, what's it worth? And a lot of people don't look at that. They look at it like a piggy bank. And, one of my buddies was joking with me the other day, is like, you're building it for Buffett to buy it. And I don't know if Warren Buffett would ever want to buy something, but, it's always good to start with the end in mind and kind of know what you can do, what you want to do. But there's some people that, like you said, Corey, like, this was their way out. And I hope they're happier for it, like, people need to be happy in what they do. And there's a lot of people that are not happy in what they're doing right now. And
I don't see you retiring at 55 though, Chris.
I won't be working all that time. So no, but like, one of my goals is, like, I write down in my legal pad every day, is I want to own 100 companies. That's my goal, is 100 LLCs in my name. But, that's kind of the entrepreneur in me, is I just like to build stuff and watch it grow and watch it morph into something way bigger than me. And then, we go build something else. So.
Yeah, that's great. So we need to start wrapping up. This has been really good. Do you have any, final words of advice or wisdom for people that are just really feeling the suck right now?
Don't ever feel bad about asking for help, and ask for help sooner than later. And be open with people, and take the ego off. That was my hardest thing, was, I always thought, like, like, I don't need to ask for help because, I'm tough. I'm if you ask for help, you look weak or something like that. You don't look weak. It's part of being in business. And it's a tough thing. It's a tough battle every day, and that's on a good day. And you take what we went through in the last 8 months, and whatever else could happen, just ask for help, and don't feel bad about it. And there's a lot of awesome people around here. Like, I'm in a bunch of business groups, way smarter people than me. And I always try to look for a room that I am not, like, I am the dumbest person in the room, and let those people just feed into you. And that's been something that's helped me get along a lot, is being able to have, almost like a brotherhood, that you can be like, hey, how are you doing this? Because I have no clue. And just ask for help. People they'll help you. Send me a message, I'll help you. Like, just don't think you're in it alone, because and that's the one thing about going through COVID, was I told Beth, we're all in this together. The banks have to work with us. Everybody has to work with us, because there's nobody not affected. And just don't be scared to ask for help. That's my biggest thing.
Great, thanks. And we'll put links to everything, all your businesses in our show notes. And so you've got the Smile Maker University and Elite Practice Development. Anything else you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, me and my wife Beth own Cannon Family Dental in Johnson City, Tennessee. It's a cosmetic and general dentistry practice, and we own a company that holds short-term and long-term rentals too. And it's kind of my passion project. That's where I want to be at 55, is in the short-term and long-term rental business. So everything kind of goes together.
Great. We'll throw all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you all for having me.
Thanks again to all our listeners and our expert, Chris Cannon, for all of the great advice today. Check the show notes to learn more about Chris and his businesses, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Our contact info is in the show notes as well.
Our next episode of this series will be released next Saturday, the 19th. We will have Heather Vargo back on to talk in more depth about mental health. And if you'd like to hear more of our business-focused podcast, head on over to bizquikpodcast.com. You can also visit our company's website at sbpace.com to learn more about us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.